I exposed my wife's 7 years performance, played my final act at a revelation dinner, served divorce papers, and reclaimed my dignity and freedom. The whiskey burned my throat as I replayed the audio for the 5th time. My hand trembled slightly, not from the alcohol but from the rage building inside me. 3 hours ago, I was just a man looking for a workout playlist on my phone. Now I was a husband listening to his wife laughing about how she'd been faking it for 7 years. I hadn't meant to record anything. My phone had been in my jacket pocket when I dropped it off at home before heading back to work for a forgotten file. The voice memo app must have activated somehow, capturing my wife's entire girls' night in our living room. I would have deleted it without listening if I hadn't heard my name mentioned amid roaring laughter. He actually thinks he's some kind of bedroom god. My wife's voice crackled through the speaker. You should have seen his face last week when I gave my award-winning performance. Oscar-worthy. The cackles that followed made my stomach turn. 7 years of practice makes perfect, ladies. None of you could fake it better than me. Her friends' responses were just as cutting. Does he really have no idea? God, that's both sad and hilarious. One even asked, how do you keep a straight face? I closed the recording and poured another drink. Our wedding photo stared back at me from across the room, her in white, me in black, both of us smiling. What a performance that had been, too. Apparently, the most damning part wasn't even the bedroom mockery. It was what she said afterward. Marriage is just a game of compromise. I pretend he satisfies me. He provides everything else I need. Fair trade. Fair trade. Like I was some kind of vending machine exchanging material comfort for affection. 7 years of building a life together reduced to a transaction. She even bragged about cheating. My first instinct was to confront her immediately, storm in, play the recording, watch her face crumble. But something stopped me. A cold clarity washed over me as I finished my drink. Why give her the satisfaction of seeing me hurt? Why let her know she still had any power over my emotions? No. This required something more calculated, more theatrical. I checked the time. She wouldn't be home for another 2 hours, plenty of time to begin plotting my response to her 7-year performance. If she wanted to turn our marriage into a stage production, I'd show her what real acting looked like. I placed my glass down and opened my laptop. First stop, finding the most ruthless divorce attorney in the city. I'd need someone who understood that this wasn't just about ending a marriage. It was about orchestrating a perfect final act. As I typed, a strange calm settled over me. The pain was still there, but now channeled into something purposeful. She thought she was clever, entertaining her friends at my expense. But she'd forgotten one crucial detail about me. I always gave as good as I got. And I was just getting started. The attorney's website loaded on my screen, specializing in high-conflict divorces. Perfect. I reached for my phone to make an appointment, already rehearsing my lines for when my wife walked through the door later. For now, she'd see the loving husband she always had, the man who had no idea he was being mocked behind his back. My performance would begin tonight, and unlike hers, when the curtain finally dropped, there would be no encore. Only an empty stage where our marriage once stood. 2 weeks of meticulous planning had passed since I discovered my wife's betrayal. Each morning I kissed her goodbye as if nothing had changed. Each night I played the role of devoted husband while systematically dismantling our shared life behind the scenes. How was your day? She'd ask, completely unaware that I'd spent my lunch hour meeting with my attorney. Same old grind, I'd respond with a practiced smile, never revealing that I'd been transferring funds to my new separate account or documenting her spending habits. My attorney was impressed with my composure. Most clients come in here breathing fire or broken beyond repair, he said during our second meeting. Your approach is refreshingly tactical. I'd simply nodded. I'm giving her exactly what she deserves, a performance. The investigation into our finances revealed patterns I'd overlooked during our marriage. Regular cash withdrawals that couldn't be accounted for. Credit card charges at restaurants on days she claimed to be working late. The deceit ran deeper than bedroom theatrics. Yesterday, I placed a small audio recorder under her car seat before she left for what she called a work dinner. The recording confirmed my suspicions when I heard her laughing with a male colleague, discussing their perfect arrangement and how oblivious I was. He's completely clueless, her voice had said, the same mocking tone she'd used with her friends. Always has been, the other voice replied. You've got him wrapped around your finger. For now, she'd answered. But eventually I'll need an upgrade. I sat in my home office reviewing the divorce papers my attorney had prepared. Property division, financial settlement, everything meticulously calculated to protect what was rightfully mine. I'd even documented her admission of deliberate deception, which would significantly impact any court proceedings. The most difficult part was maintaining the charade at home, acting interested when she spoke, pretending I still desired her. Each touch now felt like pressing my hand against ice. "Are you okay?" she asked last night, perhaps sensing the glacier forming between us. "You seem distant lately." "Just stressed about work," I replied, the lie flowing easily. "Big project coming up." She nodded sympathetically, then suggested a weekend getaway to reconnect. I agreed enthusiastically, knowing it would never happen. By the time that weekend arrived, everything would be different. Today I made my most critical move yet. While she was at her yoga class, I visited her closest friend, the one who had asked, "Does he really have no idea?" in the recording. I approached the conversation carefully, presenting myself as a concerned husband seeking advice. "I feel like something's off with our marriage," I said, watching her face closely. "Has she mentioned anything to you?" The discomfort in her expression was immediate. She stumbled over her words, avoiding eye contact. I don't think she said anything specific, really nothing at all, because lately she seems almost like she's performing rather than being genuine." Her face paled. I maintained eye contact, letting the silence stretch until she cracked. "Look, I don't want to get involved in whatever's happening between you two." I nodded understandingly. "Of course. I just thought since you're her best friend." I left the sentence hanging, watching guilt flash across her features. That interaction confirmed what I needed to know. Her friends were complicit in the mockery of our marriage. They'd all be present for the final act. Tonight I finalized my preparations, assets secured, evidence compiled, exit strategy prepared. The stage was set for the next phase of my plan. As I heard her key in the lock, I closed my laptop and slipped back into character. For a little while longer, I'd be the devoted, clueless husband she thought I was. But soon, very soon, I'd show her what a truly Oscar-worthy performance looked like. 1 month into my performance, I was surprised by how easy deception had become. Every fake smile, every forced laugh, every time I pretended not to notice her late-night texts, each moment was another brick in the wall I was building between my past and my future. "You seem different lately," she said this morning over breakfast, studying me with narrowed eyes. "More, I don't know. Relaxed." I smiled, taking a sip of coffee. Maybe I'm just finding my groove again. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was more focused, more determined than I'd been in years. Planning the dismantling of our marriage had given me clarity I'd forgotten existed. "Well, I like it," she replied, reaching across to squeeze my hand. I returned the gesture, wondering if she noticed how I no longer lingered in her touch. Yesterday marked a significant milestone. I'd secured a lease on a new apartment across town. Modern, minimalist, everything our shared home wasn't. I'd signed the papers during lunch and paid 3 months in advance. My essential belongings had already been gradually migrating to a storage unit. Nothing she would immediately notice, just items of personal significance I couldn't bear to lose in the fallout. My attorney called with updates on the divorce filing. "Everything's ready whenever you are," he confirmed. "But remember, once we file, there's no going back." "I'm counting on that," I replied. The most challenging aspect of my plan was orchestrating the social element. I needed witnesses to her humiliation, the same people who had laughed along with her mockery. Last weekend provided the perfect opportunity when we hosted a dinner party for her closest friends and their partners. Throughout the evening I played subtle psychological games, referencing inside jokes from her girls' nights, comments just ambiguous enough that only someone who knew about her mockery would catch the double meaning. I watched her friends exchange nervous glances, their laughter slightly too high-pitched, too forced. "You know me so well," I said, locking eyes with her across the table after she predicted my opinion on a topic. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm really that transparent, or if you're just a brilliant actress." Her smile faltered for just a second, so quick anyone else would have missed it. But I saw it, the first crack in her performance. Later that night, after everyone had left and she was removing her makeup in the bathroom, I made a calculated move. "Your friend seemed a bit off tonight," I mentioned casually, leaning against the door frame, "especially Diane. Is everything okay with her?" She paused, makeup wipe halfway to her face. "What do you mean?" "I don't know. Just got the impression there was something uncomfortable between you two, like she's keeping a secret." The panic that flashed across her face was almost imperceptible but deeply satisfying. "You're imagining things," she replied too quickly. "Probably," I conceded before dropping the bomb. "By the way, I ran into her husband at the gym yesterday. We're going for drinks next week. I think he could become a good friend." She dropped her makeup brush. The sound of it hitting the counter echoed in the tiled bathroom. "You never mentioned that," she said, voice carefully controlled. I shrugged. Didn't think it was important. "Anyway, I'm beat. Coming to bed soon?" As I turned to leave, I caught her reflection in the mirror. Fear clearly etched across her features. She was starting to realize her carefully constructed world had vulnerabilities she hadn't secured. Today, I executed another phase. I deliberately left my laptop open at home while taking a shower, knowing her curiosity would get the better of her. The screen displayed an email confirmation for a couples therapy session, something I had no intention of attending. The appointment was scheduled for the exact day and time I planned to serve her with divorce papers. The stage was nearly set. My new bank accounts were established. My exit strategy was solid. The divorce papers were prepared. All that remained was selecting the perfect moment for the final act. A moment that would ensure she understood exactly who had delivered the truly award-worthy performance in our marriage. As evening approached, I received a text from her. "Made dinner reservations for Friday at Bellini's. 8 p.m., special surprise for you." I smiled at my phone. Little did she know I had a special surprise planned for her, too, and mine would be coming much sooner than Friday. By Wednesday, the chess pieces were perfectly positioned for my endgame. My wife grew increasingly agitated as her carefully constructed facade began crumbling around her. The dynamic had shifted so subtly she couldn't pinpoint exactly when she'd lost control. My meeting with Diane's husband had proven enlightening. Over beers, I casually steered the conversation toward marital trust. "Ever wonder what they really talk about during those girls' nights?" I asked, maintaining an expression of good-natured curiosity. He laughed nervously. "Probably just complaining about us, right?" "Probably," I agreed, taking a calculated sip. "Though sometimes I wonder if we'd be horrified to hear what's actually said." His expression changed almost imperceptibly. "What do you mean?" "Just thinking out loud," I replied with a dismissive wave. "But you know, between us, have you ever felt like your wife keeps certain friends separate from you? Like there's a whole world you're not supposed to see?" The look that crossed his face told me everything. He'd had suspicions too. "Diane's been weird lately," he admitted, "especially when I mention you or your wife." Almost guilty. I just nodded thoughtfully, letting him connect the dots himself. By the time we parted ways, I'd planted enough seeds of doubt that he'd be watching his wife's reactions closely, especially whenever my name or my wife's came up. Another witness primed for the final scene. At home, my wife's behavior grew increasingly erratic. She called 3 times during my workday, something she rarely did, with transparent excuses about dinner plans and weekend activities. Her real purpose was obvious. She was checking on me, suddenly uncertain about where I stood. Last night, she initiated intimacy with unusual enthusiasm. I played along, delivering my most convincing performance yet, all while feeling absolutely nothing. Afterward, she propped herself up on one elbow, studying my face. "Was that good for you?" she asked, searching for validation. The temptation to throw her mockery back in her face was nearly overwhelming. Instead, I smiled and kissed her forehead. "What do you think?" Her eyes narrowed slightly at my non-answer, another hairline fracture in her confidence. This morning, I executed another calculated move. While she was in the shower, I deliberately left evidence of my apartment hunting on my tablet, open to a page of already viewed listings, carefully selected to be within our budget but completely counter to her taste. When I returned to the bedroom, the tablet had been moved slightly, and her expression at breakfast was troubled. "Everything okay?" I asked innocently. "Fine," she replied too quickly. Then, with forced casualness, "I was thinking we should look into redecorating. Maybe updating our style a bit." I responded non-committally. "I've actually been thinking about making some changes myself." At work, I finalized arrangements with my attorney. The divorce papers would be delivered tomorrow, not at the restaurant as she planned, but at the small gathering she'd organized at our home beforehand, a pre-dinner drink with the same friends who had laughed at my expense. Timing perfect. Audience ideal. My phone buzzed with a text from her. "Don't forget tomorrow at 7. Everyone will be here first for drinks, then we'll head to the restaurant." I replied with appropriate enthusiasm. appreciating how perfectly she'd set the stage for her own downfall. She had no idea that her special surprise would be thoroughly overshadowed by mine. Late afternoon brought an unexpected development. Diane called me directly, something that had never happened before. "I need to talk to you," she said, her voice strained. "About your wife." "I'm listening," I replied calmly. "She's been saying things about your marriage. I didn't think much of it at first, just girls being girls, you know. But lately it's felt wrong, the way she talks about you behind your back." I let the silence stretch, forcing her to fill it. "I should have said something sooner," she continued. "It's just, she's my friend, but what she's doing isn't right." "Thank you for telling me," I said simply. "Would you be willing to repeat this tomorrow when everyone's together?" Her hesitation was brief. "Yes." "This has gone too far." I hung up with satisfaction. Another ally secured, another nail in the coffin of my wife's social standing. When I arrived home, my wife was unusually attentive, almost desperate to please. She'd prepared my favorite meal, opened an expensive bottle of wine, dressed in an outfit I'd once complimented. "What's the occasion?" I asked, maintaining my facade. "Does there need to be one?" she countered, pouring wine with a slightly trembling hand. "I just wanted to do something nice." I smiled, raising my glass in a toast. "To surprises." She clinked her glass against mine, unaware that in less than 24 hours, her entire world would collapse around her. My performance was about to reach its climax, and unlike hers, my finale would bring down the house. The day of reckoning arrived with perfect clarity. Every detail of my plan had been meticulously arranged, every contingency considered. As I adjusted my tie in the mirror, I felt strangely calm, the tranquility of a man who knows exactly what's coming. My wife fluttered anxiously around the house, checking appetizers, straightening decorations, glancing at her phone. She'd been on edge all day, her movements jerky and unfocused. "Everything looks great," I assured her, placing a hand on her shoulder. She flinched slightly, another telling sign of her growing unease. "I just want tonight to be perfect," she said, forcing a smile. I nodded sympathetically. "It will be memorable, I promise you that." The doorbell rang at precisely 6:55. Diane and her husband arrived first, followed quickly by the other two couples, all key witnesses from that fateful girls' night. The tension in the room was immediate and palpable. Diane could barely meet my wife's eyes, and the others maintained overly bright smiles that never quite reached their eyes. My wife poured drinks with shaking hands, spilling red wine on the counter. "Sorry, I'm just a little clumsy today," she laughed nervously, quickly wiping up the spill. I moved around the room with deliberate ease, engaging each guest in conversation, noting how they shifted uncomfortably whenever my wife approached. Their guilt was written across their faces, a preview of the shattered social circle she would be left with when the night was over. At 7:20, right on schedule, the doorbell rang again. My wife frowned, checking her phone. "Are we expecting someone else?" "It must be a delivery," I replied smoothly, moving toward the door. My attorney's assistant stood on the porch, legal envelope in hand. "Delivery for Mrs. "I'll take that," I interrupted, accepting the envelope with a nod of thanks. Returning to the living room, I found all conversation had stopped. 6 pairs of eyes tracked my movement as I crossed to where my wife stood. "What's that?" she asked, voice tight. Instead of answering, I addressed the room. "Before we continue this evening, there's something I'd like to share with all of you, especially since you've all been such an appreciative audience before." My wife's face drained of color. "What are you talking about?" I removed my phone from my pocket and played the recording, the one that had started everything. Her voice filled the silence. "He actually thinks he's some kind of bedroom god. You should have seen his face last week when I gave my award-winning performance. Oscar-worthy." The room froze. One of the women covered her mouth. Another stared fixedly at the floor. My wife lunged for the phone. "That's private." "How did you—" I held it out of reach, my voice remaining calm. "Private? Like when you shared intimate details of our marriage with your friends? Like when you boasted about deceiving me for 7 years?" I gestured to the group. "With this very audience." "It was just girl talk," she stammered, looking desperately to her friends for support. None came. "Girl talk," I repeated, nodding thoughtfully. "And that's what you call discussing your affair with your colleague? Just girl talk?" Her face registered shock. "You know about everything." I finished for her. "I know everything. The faking, the lying, the stealing from our joint accounts, the affair. I've known for weeks." She shook her head in disbelief. But you've been so normal. You've been acting, I suggested, allowing myself a small smile. Giving a performance. Yes, I have. And unlike yours, mine was convincing. I turned to our guests. You all participated in humiliating me behind my back. You laughed while she mocked our marriage. My gaze settled on Diane. Though I understand at least one of you developed a conscience. Diane nodded slightly, unable to look at my wife. My wife's shock transformed into anger. You've been investigating me, talking to my friends behind my back. Ironic that you're upset about betrayal, isn't it? I replied evenly. I handed her the envelope. These are divorce papers. Everything's been arranged, division of assets, ownership of the house. You'll find it's all very fair. Despite the circumstances, you can't just end our marriage like this, she hissed, tears forming in her eyes. Actually, I can. But unlike you, I'm not doing it through deception. I'm doing it honestly, directly, and with witnesses who know exactly why. She turned to her friends, desperate. Are you all just going to sit there? Say something. The uncomfortable silence that followed was answer enough. I checked my watch. Our dinner reservation is in 30 minutes. I won't be attending, but don't let that stop the rest of you. I looked around the room. Though I imagine the appetite for celebration has somewhat diminished, I picked up my pre-packed overnight bag from behind the couch, another detail she hadn't noticed. I'll be staying elsewhere tonight. My attorney will contact you tomorrow to arrange next steps. Her tears were flowing freely now, a mixture of rage and humiliation. You planned all this to embarrass me in front of everyone. I planned this, I agreed, to show you exactly what it feels like when someone you trust puts on a performance at your expense. I moved toward the door, then paused. The difference is my performance ends tonight. Yours lasted 7 years. As I opened the front door, I delivered my final line, the one I'd been crafting for weeks. You boasted about being Oscar-worthy. But remember, even the greatest actresses eventually get their final curtain call. The sound of the door closing behind me was the most satisfying noise I'd heard in years. As I walked to my car, I heard raised voices erupting inside, the beginning of her social reckoning. The performance was over. The truth had taken its place. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't have to pretend anymore. 3 weeks after my dramatic exit, I sat across from my attorney in his office, reviewing the final settlement agreement. The sun streamed through his windows, casting long shadows across the polished table, a fitting metaphor for the closing chapter of my marriage. She's agreed to all terms, he confirmed, sliding the document toward me. No contests, no delays, no further negotiations. It's unusually straightforward for a case like this. I nodded, unsurprised. She has no leverage, and she knows it. Plus, she wants this to disappear as quickly as possible. The aftermath of my revelation had been swift and comprehensive. Within days, her carefully constructed social circle had imploded. Diane and her husband had cut ties completely. The others maintained only the most superficial contact, the kind reserved for people you no longer respect but haven't officially excommunicated. Her workplace situation had deteriorated similarly. Once her affair became known, her professional reputation suffered. Office politics turned against her, and her performance reviews suddenly reflected problems that had conveniently been overlooked before. Meanwhile, I had flourished in my newfound freedom. My apartment had become a sanctuary of peace, no pretense, no performance, just authentic living. I'd reconnected with old friends who had gradually faded from my life during the marriage. The contrast between my past constraints and present liberty was staggering. There is one thing, my attorney added, interrupting my thoughts. She's requested a final meeting before signing. Just the two of you. I raised an eyebrow. For what purpose? She didn't specify. It's entirely your choice whether to agree. I considered for a moment. There was nothing left to say, nothing she could offer that would interest me. Yet a final, definitive closing might provide the punctuation mark this chapter needed. Set it up, I decided. Neutral location, public but private enough for conversation, and only 15 minutes. 2 days later, I arrived at an upscale coffee shop downtown. She was already there, seated at a corner table, looking significantly less put together than I remembered. The confident, manicured woman who had laughed at my expense with her friends was gone. In her place sat someone smaller, somehow diminished. I ordered a black coffee at the counter, then joined her, making no effort to soften my approach. You requested this meeting. I'm listening. She stared at me for a long moment. You've completely destroyed me, she finally said, her voice lacking the accusatory tone I'd expected. It was merely a statement of fact. No, I corrected calmly. You destroyed yourself. I simply declined to play the role of oblivious victim any longer. She nodded slightly, accepting this. I've lost everything. My friends, my reputation, potentially my job. And you're here for what? Sympathy? Understanding, maybe? She twisted her wedding ring, still on her finger despite everything. What you did was calculated. Cold. You planned every detail of my humiliation. I took a deliberate sip of coffee. Yes, I did. Just as you calculated and planned every detail of your deception for 7 years. It wasn't the same, she protested weakly. You're right, I agreed, it wasn't. You betrayed someone who trusted you completely. I exposed someone who had already betrayed that trust. There's a significant moral difference. She looked down at the table. I've been in therapy, trying to understand why I did what I did. That's commendable, I said without warmth. Self-improvement is important, though it would have been more valuable before destroying our marriage. Can you ever forgive me? The question hung between us. I studied her face, searching for manipulation, for the practiced vulnerability she deployed so effectively during our years together. I found only genuine desperation, the look of someone grasping for any handhold to stop their fall. Forgiveness isn't relevant, I finally replied. I don't hate you. I don't wish you ill. I simply don't care anymore. You've become a closed chapter in my life. Tears welled in her eyes. 7 years together and you can just erase me? You erased us, long before I discovered the truth, I pointed out. Every time you faked intimacy, every time you lied, every time you mocked our marriage to your friends, you were erasing our relationship one betrayal at a time. She wiped her eyes. I didn't realize what I had until it was gone. That's a common experience, I acknowledged. But realizations that come too late aren't grounds for reconciliation. They're lessons for your next relationship. I checked my watch. 12 minutes had passed. Our time is almost up. Was there anything specific you wanted beyond emotional closure? She hesitated, then reached into her purse and withdrew a small leather-bound book. Your grandfather's journal. You left it when you moved out. I know how much it means to you. I accepted it with genuine appreciation. It was indeed something irreplaceable I'd somehow overlooked. Thank you. I didn't read it, she added quickly. I respected your privacy, at least that much. The irony of her statement hung in the air between us. I stood, tucking the journal into my jacket pocket. The divorce will be final next week. I wish you well, sincerely. I hope you find whatever you're looking for. And you? She asked, looking up at me. What are you looking for now? I considered her question honestly. Nothing. For the first time in years, I'm not searching for anything. I'm simply living authentically. As I walked out of the coffee shop, I felt the weight of my wedding ring in my pocket, removed weeks ago but carried as a reminder. I paused by a street musician's open guitar case and dropped the platinum band inside. The musician nodded thanks, never knowing the significance of what I'd just discarded. My phone buzzed with a text from Diane's husband. Guys' night still on for Thursday? I smiled and replied affirmatively. The unexpected friendship had been one positive outcome of this ordeal, a connection built on mutual respect and authenticity. The afternoon sun warmed my face as I walked toward my car. My performance had ended, the curtain had fallen, but unlike the hollow finales of my wife's deceptions, mine had led to something genuine, freedom, self-respect, and the unshakable knowledge that I would never again accept anything less than complete authenticity in my life. The applause, as it turned out, had been for me all along. Our story has come to an end. If you've made it this far, how about subscribing to our channel? It helps us immensely. I've selected 2 other videos for you that I'm sure you'll enjoy. Feel free to click on them. I'll be waiting for you in the next story. See you soon.